Let's talk about adverbs in the English and German language, but this time let's pay a little more attention to the English language because there are a few mistakes that even native speakers of English make in regards to adverbs. For example, das hast du sehr gut gesagt. Das, was du gesagt hast, war sehr gut. In German, the word gut does not change spelling or pronunciation regardless of whether you're using it as an adjective or as an adverb. But in English it does. You said that very well. What you just said was very good. The word good can only be used as an adjective and the word well can only be used as an adverb. It sounds strange if you mix them up. For example, you could say, you said that very good, or what you just said was very well. Those are both wrong, but it's still kind of clear what you meant, and this is kind of a common mistake in English. You hear people say things like, you did good, kid. You did real good. Okay, you meant he did well, but it's such a common mistake that nobody bats an eye in modern English about that. There's some other mistakes that people make with regards to adverbs, so let's talk about adverbs in English and German and see how the two languages contrast and compare. And we might find that the German language is actually a little bit easier here. This is Lernen und Fahren. Okay, super quick review. An adverb is a word in a sentence that modifies a verb, as opposed to an adjective, which is a word in a sentence that modifies a noun. For example, she is quiet. Okay, the word quiet is modifying a person, place, or thing in that sentence, therefore it's being used as an adjective. If we were to change the sentence a little bit, we could say, she speaks quietly. It's technically wrong in English to say she speaks quiet. Why? Because in English, when we change from an adjective to an adverb, generally, we have a quasi-rule in English that says that you have to add ly as a suffix to the adjective in order to form the adverb. Having said that, a lot of English speakers didn't get the memo on that one, and they'll say things like, she speaks real quiet. Or, oh, that guy, he drives so slow. Instead of saying she speaks quietly or he drives slowly. But the confusion here is understandable because this rule is not universal. In fact, it's not even really a rule in English that we have to add ly to an adjective to come up with an adverb. And in fact, there are some crazy weird exceptions in English where adding ly to an adjective gives you a completely different word with a completely different meaning. For example, hard in English. What does hard mean? Hard can mean difficult, like this is a hard test, but it can also mean firm or unyielding, like steel is hard. So if I were to say something like, I hardly do that, does that mean that I'm doing that with great difficulty, or that I'm doing that very firmly? No, weirdly, it means neither of those things. Hardly in English does not mean what it looks like, even though we followed that pattern of putting ly at the end of the adjective. Hardly means neither with difficulty nor with firmness. It means something more like scarcely or barely at all. In fact, bare is another one. Bare, not the animal bear, but the adjective bare means naked. So if I say I barely do that, does that mean that I do that naked without clothes on? No. Barely actually is a synonym for hardly. It means scarcely or rarely. I barely do that. I hardly ever do that. And there's another weird exception to this in English, in that some adjectives, for some reason, do not take the ly suffix when you form an adverb out of them. Why? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. For example, this is a fast motorcycle. Could I say in English, I'm driving fastly? Well, no, fastly is not a word. It should be. We followed the pattern. We added ly to the adjective, but we wound up with a non-word, fastly. Fast is one of the weird ones where you can just say, I drive fast. And hence we arrive at this confusion in English, where some people will just not use the ly adverb form because they've seen it done with other adjectives. Like fast. I drive fast is perfectly correct, even though it should be I drive fastly. But if you switch to any other adjective, this is a quick motorcycle, I drive quickly. This is a rapid motorcycle, I drive rapidly. This is a speedy motorcycle, I drive speedily. With almost every other adjective, we have to add ly to get the adverb. But let's now take a look at German, because weirdly, none of these problems exist in German. Sie ist leise. Sie spricht leise. Dieses Motorrad ist schnell. Ich fahre schnell. Sein Auto ist langsam. Fährt langsam. At first glance, this is kind of confusing coming from English because the word is not changing form when we switch between the adjective and the adverb usage. So, if it doesn't change form and we're just kind of used to doing that in English, then how do you know in German whether it's meant as an adjective or an adverb? This is confusing, right? Well, no, think about it. When you look at these sentences, it's perfectly obvious which of these sentences are using that word to modify a noun and are therefore adjectives, and which of those sentences are using the word to modify a verb and are therefore adverbs. So, if it's perfectly obvious when you see it in context, then why does the word need to change form between adjective usage and adverb usage? It kind of doesn't. German gets this right here. It's English that is unnecessarily complicated. So, okay, what's the catch? German can't be easier than English. It just can't be. All the episodes we've done on this channel where we've looked at stuff that is strangely complicated in German compared to English, this looks like it's the other way around. So what's the catch here? There's only a couple catches that I can think of, and neither one of them are huge. Number one, in German, when you use the word in its adjective form, you have to worry about declension. We don't care about this in English. Our adjectives don't undergo declension. So, for example, this is a fast motorcycle. Great. In English, we can just use the adjective in its bare, uninflected form. That's fine. But in German, you have to say, das ist ein schnelles Motorrad. Schnell changes to schnelles. Why? Because adjectives in German have to take a specific ending based on case and grammatical gender and plurality. We don't do that in English. That being said, if you said, das ist ein Schnellmotorrad, the same way you'd say it in English, that's wrong, but it's a pretty minor mistake. The only other catch that I can think of is that in German, if you're using a bunch of words to modify a verb in a sentence, if there's a time specifier in the mix, the time specifier in German will usually come immediately after the verb. It'll come right up front in the chain of modifiers for the verb. This goes back to Tekamolo. We did an episode on Tekamolo last year or 2 years ago, I don't remember. In English, it's the other way around. The time specifier generally comes last. So, for example, I'm riding my motorcycle to the mountains today. Today generally comes at the end. That's not a rule in English. It's more of a convention. In German, it's the other way around. You would say, ich fahre heute mit meinem Motorrad in die Berge. This is a mistake that I make constantly in German because my brain is pretty ingrained in that speech pattern of putting the time specifier at the end, but it doesn't work that way in German. It sounds a bit weird if you say, ich fahre mit meinem Motorrad in die Berge heute. That sounds natural coming from English, but it's kind of weird German. It's similar in English if you said, I'm riding today my motorcycle to the mountains. I'm riding today my motorcycle. Okay, it makes sense. Your meaning will be understood, but that sounds very strange. So, this is one of the rare occasions where the rules in the English language are actually a little bit more onerous than in German, which is kind of neat. Usually it's the other way around. This is kind of a neat little vacation for people who are English speakers who are trying to learn German. Imagine how hard it is to go the other way when you're speaking German and you're trying to learn English, and you've got to memorize all these extra rules and all those exceptions to the rules. We don't have to imagine that because we're trying to learn German, and we encounter this all the time, where things seem simple in English and are crazy complicated in German. In English, we have to worry about the spelling and pronunciation change, adding ly sometimes, but not always. And there are some cases in English where it's kind of ambiguous, whether you're using it as an adjective or an adverb. For example, she speaks very good English. Is that correct or is it wrong? I had to think about this one. Very good could be modifying the noun English. The English that she speaks is very good, therefore it's an adjective. But it could also be that you're modifying the verb speak. She speaks English very well, is what you're trying to say. So, she speaks very good English. Is that right or wrong? Even as a native speaker, I'm not sure. Now imagine trying to explain that to someone who's trying to learn English. Good luck. So, let's be grateful for these rare occasions where things are just a little bit easier in our target language than they are in our native language, because that doesn't happen very often, especially when you're going from English to German. So, that'll do it for today. We will see you next time on Lernen und Fahren.